What's up, interview hackers? Sam here from byte.com, and today I want to address a question that I've been asked a lot recently by several students of mine, and I thought was maybe something that I should address more generally. So the question here is, can I use built-in libraries or can I use built-in data structures when I'm solving a question during my interview? And I totally understand what's the question behind the question here. This is really wondering whether you're able to use these tools that are available to you. What is the limitation on what tools that are available to you in the language that you're using that you can actually use in your interview? And so I think it's really important to understand what the expectations are from your interviewer and what you should expect to be able to do during your interview. Because let's think about it for a second. Let's take the example of you are implementing breadth first search. And so you need to use, that you need to use a queue to implement that breadth first search, but you don't know whether or not you need to implement the queue yourself or not. This is a really important question because depending on whether you implement the queue yourself or not, it can dramatically change the outcome of the interview itself. These interviews, we have such limited time. We have such time constraints on how long we can spend going through it that if you take 5 minutes, you take 10 minutes to implement a queue, that's going to dramatically affect the way in which you are actually able to complete the problem. And so I want to give you two different mental frameworks, two different ways that you can work through this and figure out exactly what it is that your interviewer is expecting so that you know what to do in your interview in this case. So the first thing that you can do, and the first thing that I think is a really valuable tool, not just for this, but in general, is to put yourself in the mindset of your interviewer. Think about it from the perspective of, if you were the person conducting this interview, what would you expect the person to do? What are you looking for to learn? What are you looking to find out about this person in the interview? And let's use this example of breadth first search. Well, in the example of breadth first search, I actually don't care if you know how to implement a queue, right? It's not that implementing a queue is bad, and it's not that it doesn't show me something about your abilities, but that is not what I am asking you. What I'm asking you and what I am trying to figure out is whether you know how to implement breadth first search. And so if you spend all this time trying to implement a queue data structure, that's actually taking away from your ability to demonstrate to me the thing that I actually wanted to see in the first place. And so it's really important to put yourself in the mindset of that interview and think about, is implementing this data structure, is implementing this algorithm actually fundamental to what they are asking me? There are certainly cases, like let's say that I asked you to reverse a linked list. If you just use a built-in linked list and you do like list.reverse, that's pretty transparently not what I want you to do, right? That's pretty obviously it's so simplistic that I'm not actually learning anything about your ability to code other than the fact that you know that there's a linked list library. However, if that's just one small component of a bigger problem, chances are that I'm less concerned about whether or not you know how to do that specific thing, and more concerned about how it fits into the general problem. That being said, I also wanted to add, there are cases in which this can actually be beneficial for you to say, let me use the built-in library, or let me use some built-in functionality rather than implementing it myself. It really, if you put yourself in the mindset of that interviewer, it can actually, if you think about it, it shows familiarity with the language and it shows familiarity with the tools that you have available to you. When I'm looking for someone to work with, I want to know that this person is going to do things in the most efficient way possible. I want to know that they're aware of existing tools out there, and I want to know that they know like the most idiomatic way to do things. If I were doing breadth first search in real world code, I wouldn't implement the queue myself. Even if I had to implement the breadth first search for some reason or another, I would still use the built-in queue data structure, or if I was in Python, I would use a list, because I know that that's going to be more stable. That's going to, we've covered all those edge cases. We have this, robust solution, rather than if I were to implement it myself, where there's just so much more possibility of causing issues, of all sorts of crap that I don't want to deal with. So I would actually prefer that the person in the real world implement that queue using the built-in tools rather than try and implement it themselves. It's the same as whenever you have the opportunity to do something more idiomatic in your code, I would encourage you to do it. So like if you're using Python and you can do simple list comprehensions, for example, that's actually a good thing in your interview. Yes, it can go too far. Yes, you can go to the point where like you're doing a list comprehension, or if you're using Java 8, you do some sort of Lambda where it's like really, really complicated and it's hard to understand what's going on. But in a simpler sense, if you understand that if you can use it in certain cases, it's a great demonstration of you knowing how to write concise and efficient code. And so I highly encourage you to do that. So step one, whenever you're unsure, put yourself in the mindset of that interviewer. Think about what it is that they are trying to learn from asking you this interview question, and whether using built-in tools, whether using built-in data structures, whether using built-in whatever, or using external libraries, think about whether that affects their ability to gain the information, gain the knowledge that they were trying to get from that interview. So that's number one. And number two, which is really important, and I think people are kind of resistant to do, is you can always ask. And this is really valuable because what asking can do, and I think that if you ask the interviewer whether or not they mind if you use some built-in library, or you use some built-in function, or you do some, you use some standard library, when you ask, it demonstrates to them that you are actually familiar with that thing. So they may say, yeah, sure, go ahead and use that built-in function. Or they may say, no, I'd actually prefer if you implement it yourself. But regardless, it demonstrates to them that you are familiar with the tools that are available to you. Maybe they don't want you to use those tools because maybe that's counter to what they're asking in the interview, but it demonstrates to them that you have that knowledge, that you have that skill set, and their assumption is going to be that even if they don't want you to do it, that if they had let you do it that way, that you would. And so you're kind of implicitly showing that you have this deeper knowledge about the language, that you have this deeper knowledge of what you're doing. So I'd highly encourage you to, when you are aware, when there are options available to you, at least try and use them. At least put it out there that that's an option that you're thinking about using, and let them decide for you. But don't spend tons and tons of time re-implementing things that already exist. One of the easiest ways to screw up your interview is to spend half the time re-implementing stuff that they didn't even care about you implementing in the first place. Really, you want to get to that end goal. You want to get to that solution of the problem that they're actually asking you as quickly as possible, while also demonstrating to them what it is that they want to know. And so if you can do that using built-in libraries, if you can do that using built-in data structures, that's the way to do it. And so with that, that's all I got for you in this video today. If you enjoyed this video, definitely go to bytebybyte.com/50questions and download our free 50 coding interview questions guide. I appreciate you joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.